Ladies and gents, welcome back to another video. In front of me here is an 8x6x5 box, and inside of it is an iPhone XS. This is, as far as I can tell, the cheapest fully functional, or mostly functional, I'll explain that in a bit, iPhone XS listed for sale on eBay, and I happened to see it, so I bought it. The price that I paid, I will put right there. I forget exactly how much it was. I think it was like between $50, $60, $70. Either way, really cheap for an iPhone XS. There are some problems with this device, but this is not going to be a vintage iOS unboxing, as obviously the XS is pretty new and there's no special software here. This is just a cheap iPhone XS that we're going to unbox and do a quick little review on. So with that said, let's get this thing opened up. Look at all this dirt that came out of the box. Like, this is gross. Who is packing their stuff and then just like has dirt in the package? That's terrible. That's going to be mentioned on this seller's feedback. Let me get that cleaned up before we continue this video. All right, we're back. Let's get our props back set up here. And we have another package to open, and you can see this one is like literally riddled with more dirt. So let me do my best to get this opened very carefully so we don't make a mess everywhere. Okay, here's our iPhone. It is a XS. You can tell because it is in the gold color, which should show up there on the camera. If you compare it to the white of this box, you can see that it does have a little bit of gold to it. But as you can tell, it is cracked here on the back. Nothing too significant, but certainly a few cracks there. And on the front, we do have quite a bit of damage. You can see there are two significant impact marks there with cracks spreading over the device. There is a screen protector on this, and I think I'm going to take that off because that is pretty ugly. So hopefully this makes a cool noise. And it did, but I don't think you guys will be able to hear that. There's an actually very clean display underneath. No scratches, just those cracks. Let me give this device a little bit of a clean because it is a little bit dirty. All right, the phone cleaned up decently well. The edges are in pretty good condition. I think this phone was kept in a case most of its life and probably just saw a couple pretty significant tumbles that resulted in the cracks we can see there on the front as well as the back. So let's see if this thing has any power. My guess is it does, because these newer phones tend to have pretty strong batteries. As this is booting up, I'll tell you a little bit what I remember from the listing. Obviously it's damaged, but there should not be any iCloud account or passwords. I don't remember about the network status. Feeling like this thing's probably locked to a certain carrier. But the big issue with this device is the fact that it has an aftermarket display. So the aftermarket display is cracked, as you can see there. But apparently Face ID is not working, which is super common. If you don't move the original Face ID components onto the replacement display, Face ID fails to function. So I think that is going to be our biggest drawback. And then potentially the colors and the contrast ratios are going to be off on our replacement display. So let me go through the setup screen here. And once we get to the home screen, we'll see what our device has to work with. Hopefully there are no activation issues here. Seller said that this phone was working just fine in terms of iClouds and passwords. So I'm not expecting any trouble here. It's just taking a bit longer than I like to see. All right, and there we go. No problems there. Let's see if we get Face ID. I'm gonna test this off camera, see if it's working. And we get this message, Face ID not available. So I think that we have a non-OEM sensors up there for the camera. So I think that's going to be our problem. This is looking like a pretty new version of iOS. I haven't done a setup on this in a long time. Usually we're doing like iOS 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm guessing this is like iOS 15 or 16. I think the XS is going to get iOS 18 here this fall. So that is actually the oldest device that is supporting iOS 18, the iPhone XS and the XR. Actually pretty impressed because that means these will have an additional year beyond what the iPhone 8 and the iPhone X had. Yeah, Face ID issue detected. We'll talk about software support here in just a minute. Let's head into settings, general, and about. and see what version we're running. So we're running iOS 17.4.1. I think 17.5 is the latest version as of recording this video. This is a 64 gig model. Let me see if the network status shows up for this device. So actually it says no SIM restrictions. That's great. That means that this device is fully unlocked and can be used on any carrier. So there we go. We've got an iPhone XS, a really cheap device. And obviously this has a slew of problems. The main one being the Face ID is not working. The display actually looks pretty nice. I'm having a bit of a difficult time deciding if the colors are completely accurate or not. I think they're a little bit washed out, not quite as dark as they should be. But something else I'm interested in seeing is, first of all, I want to see this warning message, Face ID issue. This is probably going to say that it is a non-authentic component, which is what we were expecting. So let's see. All right, so no real good answers there other than I think what I've seen online is that if this component is not replaced onto the replacement display, then you lose Face ID functionality. So something else I want to check, I want to see battery health. I'm interested to find out what condition our battery is in. 80%, that is right at the threshold between normal and service recommended. Honestly, not too surprised given the age of this iPhone. I forget what year this came out. I'm thinking it was 2018. I think it was fall of 2018 when this came out. If that's wrong, I'll leave the correct info up there. But the iPhone XS, in my opinion, is one of the most overlooked devices. When the iPhone X came out a year before, that brought all the hype, the new design change and everything. And this came out a year later, looked identical. Well, not quite identical. There are a few subtle changes, such as the modification of the microphone ports down here, as well as I think some of the antenna lines, which are not going to show up here, but I think some of these were rearranged here on the XS. And then, of course, we did have the XS Max, which was the first time we got a Max iPhone in the lineup, and a few other small changes. We got a 512 gig capacity. We got 4 gigs of RAM for the first time in an iPhone, and I think we got the A12. I believe the A12 chip was introduced here on the iPhone XS. So this is a very capable phone, and I just spelled XS, literally XS, but it's with an X. So let's see what we've got here. We'll check out the tech specs. And I'm actually noticing there seems to be a slight delay between when I move my finger and when the device moves. I'll try to slow that down in Final Cut Pro for you guys so we can test that out. And hopefully we can see how that looks right here. So hard to say if that showed up for you guys on Final Cut, but at least in my experience here, it does feel a tiny bit laggy. Maybe that's because I'm used to the ProMotion display on all my devices, actually, except the Apple Watch have ProMotion. So as I'm just kind of aimlessly scrolling through here on the iPhone XS specs, I'm honestly not sure what's new in terms of features compared to the iPhone X. Leave me some comments down below if you know any interesting facts about the iPhone XS, either changes it brought over the iPhone X or just some other interesting tidbits. And I'd venture to say there's a fair number of you guys that are still rocking a XS or a XS Max. Let us know down below how that phone is holding up for you guys. In my experience, this is a great phone, really solid device. It does look a little bit old because it's got that older design, but honestly, who cares? It's got dual cameras. It's got this beautiful, this one I think has a 5.8 inch OLED display. The XS Max has a 6.5 inch. Face ID, you've got True Tone display. I think this is actually the last phone that has the actual 3D touch or Force Touch. I never remember what it's called. I'll look it up for you guys so you don't butcher me in the comments right now. But I think this is actually the last phone that has that. I believe the iPhone 11 got rid of that in favor of either the opposite of 3D touch or Force Touch. Okay, so this says 6S 3D touch, so that must have been what this phone has, and then Force Touch was what was introduced later on. But that means like you can literally push down harder on the device instead of just having to like hold your finger for software. And if you've never experienced it, there's really not a big difference between the two, other than you can do gestures a little bit quicker on a screen that has 3D touch. And this is actually the last supported phone that has 3D touch here for iOS 18. Everything else just has Force Touch. But let's take a look at the wallpapers here. Apple's changed it quite a bit, and it's not as fun as it used to be because they've kind of changed how you do wallpapers, and I'm honestly torn between if I like it or not. I do love the traditional iOS wallpapers and being able to choose them. This feels more like an Apple Watch setup with a lot of customization, which is nice, but I do miss having those original Apple wallpapers. And I'm honestly not even sure what we're going to do. I'll just leave it as it is. I know that's going to be boring, but it's a pretty clean look here on our iPhone XS. So one last thing before we go, I want to show you guys the video quality here on our iPhone XS. So we're going to do 4K 60, and we're going to start a recording there, and we're going to switch over to it right now. So here we are on the iPhone XS Max. Here's the main setup. Obviously, we don't have that dedicated microphone, so you're getting to hear how the internal mic sounds on our XS Max. This is recording at 4K 60, but I don't think there's any HDR, so it is going to look a little bit darker on the screen for you guys. Here we have an iPhone 7 box. How close can we get? Actually pretty close there before we lose focus. And over here on the left, we have a Nintendo 3DS XL. So let me know, how does this sound and how does this look on our XS Max? Does it seem any different other than the loss of HDR? I think this is a super capable device, but let's go ahead and switch back to my main iPhone. So there you got to see a quick glimpse at how the video and audio quality is coming from our iPhone XS. I think it's going to look basically identical. There might be a slight difference in the aperture between the devices, and of course there's going to be no HDR on this device. So if I remember to upload and edit this in HDR, you'll be able to see a difference, but if I forget to do that, then the colors will look just the same. So I think that's going to do it for this video. Kind of a quick look here at an iPhone XS. The only reason I bought this was because it was so cheap and apparently is fully functioning despite it having failed Face ID. That's the only problem functionality wise. Of course, it does have the cracked glass on the front and the rear. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you are interested in seeing more vintage Apple stuff, consider sticking around and checking out some of my other videos. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, I look forward to seeing you in another one of my videos.